Hey guys, Chad here from the Midnight Story Club, and you're now about to watch part 2 of Thomas Kaine's A Deed Most Deadly. Where does our private investigator go from here? What's about to happen? What is he really about to get into as him and Lana dive further and further into this mystery? If you want any of these books, you want to have the physical copies in your hand, you can get them in the link below down at Amazon. Be sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Chapter 6. The Hollow Ledger. The brownstone loomed, darker and more sinister than memory recalled, its facade crouched like a wounded beast, burdened with unspeakable secrets. Tendrils of fog clung wildly to its windows, like restless specters with nowhere to rest. I stood brooding in the oppressive gloom beneath the Drexler residence, Lana at my side. Her pale coat was barely discernible amid the swirling mist, gloved hands quivering not from the chill, but with the weight of haunting memories. "You didn't bring me here often," she murmured, her voice brittle with suppressed dread. "Then let's make it count," I replied, my tone steeled with raw determination. The key still slid into the lock as if it clung to a last vestige of trust. With a reluctant groan, the door creaked open, a sound of pure disdain for disturbance. I allowed her to lead the way, not out of etiquette, but because the floorboards protested less under her lighter tread. She guided us into the study off the main hall, a narrow, oppressive room centered around a desk that embodied the resolute fortitude of a vault. Solid oak, time-worn edges bearing silent scars, and drawers that fought fiercely to deny access. "I think it's here," she said, her fingertip trembling as it pointed to a side panel. I knelt by the desk, my fingers tracing the base of the middle drawer until I discovered the concealed false back, a flawless deception that betrayed its presence under the scrutiny of touch. A flathead screwdriver snaked from my coat pocket, and in a few brutal moments the latch surrendered. The hidden panel popped open with a sharp, dismissive snap, revealing a thin, oil-stained ledger bound in cracked leather, accompanied by a folded parchment encircled by coarse twine. Lana drew a sharp, ragged breath. "Is that—" "This," I whispered hoarsely, lifting the brittle deed with care, "is the deed." Yellowed, official, and undeniably real, it testified to Philip's painstaking efforts to bury the truth. Yet it was the ledger that held a darker promise. I opened it. His signature was etched on the first page. The following spread listed names, dates, and figures, some encircled, others brutally struck through. 2 names leapt out immediately: Mortimer Childs, Ricky Saltz. Bribes, hush money, and the twisted euphemisms of consulting fees paid to zoning officials, inspectors, and even one supposedly upright city councilman. All his meticulously recorded betrayals. Philip hadn't merely grasped the worth of the land. He knew exactly who fueled its corruption and how much they paid to keep it murky. Lana sank to her knees beside me, her voice taut as a wire. "He was going to expose them?" "No," I replied as I flipped another page with grim resolve. "He was preserving this, a form of insurance, a last stand against anyone who might try to set him ablaze." A sudden creak shattered our immersion. We froze, the silence breaking with a second echo from beneath our feet. I instantly reached for my revolver. Before I could make a move, the silence exploded into chaos. Glass shattered in the parlor, a dark silhouette burst through, a long coat twisting dramatically and a flash of cold metal glinting in one hand. "Run!" I roared. Lana bolted toward the kitchen as the intruder lunged with lethal precision. I caught sight of a wicked blade and with desperate force slammed the ledger into his face. The impact bought me a mere heartbeat. He barreled against me, sending both of us crashing into the bookshelf. The impact erupted in a storm of flying paper and splintered wood. He swung again, wild, merciless, and I dodged, snatching a fireplace poker from the hearth and driving it hard into his ribs. He grunted, stubborn and relentless, refusing to yield. Another savage swing, another quick dodge. Then behind him, the crash of exploded lamp shards erupted. Lana had interfered. He staggered, dazed, as shards of glass and sparks burst around his head. I seized my chance, clutching the ledger, the deed, in Lana's trembling hand. We sprinted out the back door, plunging into the enveloping fog, not daring to slow until the relentless city swallowed us whole. Words were abandoned until we reached my car, parked 2 blocks away. With trembling urgency, I opened the glove box, shoved the ledger inside, and locked it tight. "You okay?" I managed to ask. She nodded shakily, her breath ragged. "I hit him harder than I expected." "You've got instincts," I conceded, sliding into the driver's seat. "I'm scared," she admitted, the terror raw in her voice. "Good," I muttered, igniting the engine. "It means you're still fighting." Within the hour, we were in a room at the Royal Crest Motor Inn. The neon sign out front crackled and blinked like a heart losing its rhythm in a dirty rainstorm. I threw a chair against the door and inched the blinds open just enough to watch the street. The fog of retreat still choked our thoughts, and Lana's hand trembled as she picked up the phone to call Lillian. Her words were emergent, then urgent, gasping, desperate, relayed like a distress signal through the crackling voice of an operator. "Please, Lily, I'm in trouble. He didn't know where. No, I'm with Kaine. Meet us at 8 o'clock. Where? She looked to me, her eyes wide with an untamed intensity. I scribbled the only place I could think of on hotel stationery. The Blue Note, a forgotten cocktail lounge on the river, secluded and unassuming. "We'll be there. Lily, hurry," Lana finished, the insistence in her voice unmistakable, even through the hotel's distortion. She hung up and watched the door with fearing eyes. I lit a cigarette, my mind racing with 1,000 splintering possibilities, the weight of them threatening to tear my resolve apart. The neon outside buzzed in agony. Lana sat on the corner of the bed, her face pale and her nerves shot. "Who was he?" she asked. I exhaled a blue ribbon of smoke, considering. Not Boyd, but certainly someone on his payroll. His style said muscle. His face said blank. "Will he follow us?" "Not for a while. He got nastier than he gave. We'll stay quiet here until we meet Lillian." She nodded, the fear still raw, but anchored by something deeper. "I thought I'd be safe. Coming back, I thought—" "Your father knew the risk," I cut in, harsher than intended. "He's the one who dragged you back." She recoiled like something fragile. My chest tightened. I hadn't meant it to come out that way. "I'm sorry," I said, softening, "but you being here means he had more at stake than even he knew. You must have been his last hope." Wide eyes met mine, haunted, fervent. "Then why didn't he open my letter?" "What letter?" I asked, intrigued by this new lead. Her coat flared like a ghost around her as she snatched her bag from the bed and pulled out an envelope. A weighty dispatch meant to bridge a chasm. 5 years and not a word," she said bitterly. "Then this." The postmark was 9 days old and read San Francisco. I turned it over in my hands, my mind racing with possibilities. "You want me to—" I started, the question heavy with unmasked permission. Her nod was almost imperceptible. I tore open the envelope and unfolded the typewritten pages. Philip's words stared back, each one etched with regret, desperation, and an urgency that transcended their fragile format. "My dearest Lana, if you're reading this, then I finally found the courage to send it and to tell you the truth. I never meant to drive you away. I never meant for you to feel unwelcome, unloved. I know how much my silence cost you, and it shames me more than I can bear. I don't know how long I have, but I do know this. What they want is not just property. It's more precious than that. I kept it from you because I thought it was the only way to protect you. I was wrong. They suspect you know, and I fear my stubbornness has put you in greater danger than I ever believed. Please forgive an old fool for his unforgivable mistakes. Please come back. You are still the only treasure I have. Forever, Dad." Lana's face crumpled like the paper in my hands, a torrent of emotions unraveling within. "He knew they'd come after me," she said, struggling against tears. He thought it was his fault." "It wasn't," I said with more certainty than I felt. He didn't know how far his enemies would reach, or how ruthless they'd become. She brushed a rogue tear from her cheek and let the letter fall to the floor. So what now? She asked softly. Now we meet Lillian, I replied. Later, in the eerie solitude of our booth in the Blue Note cocktail lounge, waiting on Lillian, I stared down the pages under the unforgiving glow of a single candlelight. Names, numbers, a catalog of silence sold to the highest bidder, and one final damning entry, dated the day before Philip's death. MC, $15,000. Final. Final. As in, transaction complete. Final, as in every loose end erased. Philip Drexler had been silenced, broken into oblivion, but his secrets remained, seeping into my hands like bleeding ink stained with blood. Chapter 7. The Burning Hand. The Blue Note Lounge was a place that lurked in the shadows of the city, hidden from maps and matchbooks alike. It clung to the river's edge like a secret drowning in its own vice, its cracked neon signs sputtering a weary lullaby to the empty night. Inside, smoke curled and writhed with tortured specters, and the ancient piano groaned under the weight of neglect. Lana and I crossed its threshold just past 8, stepping into the haze. Lillian Drexler was already there, occupying a booth beneath a dim, dying bulb. She wore a hat sharp enough to kill and gloves that seemed to have never felt even a whisper of remorse. When her eyes locked onto mine, they were cold, piercing, and unreadable. You came, she stated, her voice low and edged with something like inevitability. I wasn't sure you would. I never miss a bad idea, I shot back with a wry grin. Lana silently slid in beside her aunt. Lillian's gaze devoured her like an expert jeweler scrutinizing a flawed gem. The eyes. There's the resemblance, she murmured, as though confirming an unspoken truth. I've had a hell of a week, Lana admitted. We all have, came the sullen reply. I sat down and produced a folded page from my coat, a copy of the ledger's final entry, sliding it across the table like a loaded invitation. Without ceremony, Lillian unfurled it, her lips pressed into a thin line as she read. 15,000, she whispered, barely audible. And the initials. MC, I said. Mortimer Childs. The timing fits. The entry was made the day before Philip died. Her voice sank into a gutter of disbelief. You sure? He was paid, and now the original ledger and deed are all that remain as evidence. Her fingers tucked the paper away with a careful rage. And you're carrying them? Not anymore, I lied. They're secured in a lockbox, off-site. Her eyes flared with controlled fury before narrowing dangerously. Good, because someone followed me here. Lana stiffened. What? Gray sedan. It pulled in behind my cab and circled relentlessly. I ducked through a back alley. They didn't follow, but I know when I'm being tailed. Before we could let the tension settle, the waitress appeared with 3 nefarious glasses of bourbon. None of us dared refuse. I downed mine quickly, needing the burning reassurance more than the flavor. We're running out of time, I stated. Philip kept the records. Childs silenced him for cash. Boyd's in too deep, or worse. And the one who scorched that deed fragment, that wasn't mere panic. That was a cold warning. And the next warning will be anything but symbolic, Lillian toned. We barely had time to digest those words before the call came. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed. A line from Manny Vesco, an old ally in fire code enforcement who owed me more favors than he cared to list. His voice emerged on the line, like a wraith from the dark circuitry. You here yet? He asked, barely concealing his urgency. About what? I replied, my voice edged with anxiety. City Hall. Archive annex. 4-alarm blaze. It went up like a damn inferno, fueled by a book of matches. My heart lurched, stuttering in response. What got torched? Permits, contracts, historical deeds, zoning proposals, everything from the last 10 years. Anyone injured? No bodies, but the alarms were stifled until it was too late. And Kaine? Manny hesitated. Yeah? Somebody knew exactly what to burn. Only the annex. The fire steered clear of the nearby offices, singling out the records. There was a pause, thick and foreboding. I don't know what game you're playing, Manny said finally, but chasing ghosts isn't going to cut it anymore. 2 hours later, Lana and I were back at my apartment. The lock was too unnervingly smooth, and the air inside was suffocatingly still, heavy with the lingering echo of a door closed too carefully, too recently. I drew my gun, my hand steady yet full of dread, and eased the door open. The smell hit me like a punch. Stale paper, cold metal, and the bitter tang of betrayal. My apartment was ransacked. Drawers lay overturned, cushions torn asunder, and lamp cords dangled like severed nerves. Every inch had been scoured with ruthless precision. Stay back, I ordered Lana, though she'd already edged closer, breath sharp with fear. My safe, disguised behind a row of counterfeit law books, hung open, its door pried apart with tools that belonged only in the whispered legends of hardcore safecrackers. Inside, it was empty. The ledger was gone. So too were my private client lists, backup files, and the pistol I'd stashed beneath the desk drawer. Someone knew exactly what to take, I muttered, the weight of the realization crushing me, and exactly where to find it. Lana drifted to the room's edge, her arms wrapping around herself as if warding off a cold. But how could they know? You never told anyone. I nodded slowly, the truth settling like ash. No, but someone has been watching far longer than I ever suspected. We slouched among the wreckage in a suffocating silence. I poured 3 fingers worth of bourbon, leaving the bottle as a silent witness on the table. I don't get it, Lana whispered. Why not leave a message, a warning? They already did, I replied hollowly. They took the ledger. That was the message. But a gnawing certainty churned inside me. Whoever was behind this wasn't done yet. They were only just getting started. Then the phone rang at 12:37 a.m. I stared at it for a long, agonizing beat before picking it up. Yeah, I managed. Silence first, heavy and palpable. Then a voice, genderless, disturbingly calm. You've lost something. We haven't. Click. The line went dead. Anna's eyes searched mine from across the room, terrified yet challenging. What did they say? I poured the remaining bourbon into my glass, the liquid a brief solace against the dread that was rising like a tide. They know we're out of time. Chapter 8. The Ledger War. The lab at Dunsmore Technical College was a decaying relic. Peeling linoleum, stuttering fluorescent lights, and a choking smell of ammonia that clung to every surface like a curse. And yet, amidst its rot, it housed one asset no city precinct lab could boast these days. Bernie Clem. Bernie, a chemist of old and later a relentless forensic analysis, now haunted the fringes, crunching the numbers on grim jobs for those who dared not ask the foolish questions, which is precisely why I entrusted him with everything. You sure that's all you've got? He demanded, eyes narrowing behind a magnifying lens, as if every speck held secrets of an impending storm. It's a scanned copy from the backup file I stashed before the ledger vanished. Just one page, but it's the right one, I replied, my voice low and tense. Leaning in like a predator, Bernie's face contorted with focus, murmuring under his breath. There, Bernie finally hissed, his gloved finger tapping the page's corner. Spot that faint impression beneath the ink? It isn't just type, it's a watermark, a chemical signature etched into the very paper. So, I snapped, already bracing for the fallout he was about to unleash. This watermark was stamped by a private print firm that went belly up in '49. And guess who held the controlling stake? Don't tell me. I started, blood pounding. Franklin Boyd, Bernie confirmed, his voice a cold verdict. I exhaled slowly, as if the tightening net around us was a tangible force, the fish in its coils beginning to flail desperately. That night, we set the trap. In a shadowy corner booth at the Dunsmore Chronicle, I slipped a folded slip of paper to Red Atwell, the forged, missing ledger page. A seasoned reporter who knew that certain questions were better left unanswered, Red took the slip with a guarded intensity. "This is going in the late edition tomorrow," I murmured, my tone heavy with intent. "Bottom corner. Just a small mark, barely noticeable, but enough to be seen." Red's inked eyebrows arched in a mix of intrigue and concern. "You're accusing a city official of pocketing a $25,000 bribe in 1953? "I'm not accusing," I growled, each word dripping with venom. "I'm insinuating. There's a fine line, and you know it." A crooked grin spread across Red's face, his cigarette bobbing as if in dark applause. "You're trying to drive someone into panic." "No," I quipped back, voice low and dangerous. "I'm forcing them to act." By midnight, the Chronicle building lay in a deathly hush. Red had long since vanished. Lana and I huddled 2 blocks away in a borrowed car, its windows fogging like our inner turmoil as nerves gnawed at our stomachs. Stillness reigned, until it shattered. A black sedan rolled up silently, its headlights snuffed out, engine purring with sinister intent. 2 figures emerged, one tall and sinewy, the other broad and menacing. They bypassed the front door entirely. They used a key. Marty Lasker, the unwitting chronicler of this unfolding drama, hadn't intended to be present. A freelance photographer fresh off a violent boxing match in Iron Flats, Marty often used the Chronicle's basement darkroom when the light was just right and funds were scarce. As he was drying prints, the creak of an office door and the thud of heavy footsteps upstairs shattered the fragile calm. Papers rustled in frantic disarray. Marty did what any instinctual man would. He reached for his Leica LLC. Slipping low and silent through the glass that separated the darkroom from the main floor, he captured the unfolding chaos in the faint ambient light. 2 discreet shots. No flash. Click, click. Then he melted back into the shadows like a specter fleeing an angry god. The next morning, I regrouped with Red and Marty in the basement, the darkroom bathed in a crimson glow and haunted by chemical ghosts. "You didn't mention we'd have company," Red muttered, setting the negatives aside to dry. "I never expected them to be this stupid," I retorted, the tension in my voice echoing the violence of the night. Marty simply shrugged, already busy developing his evidence. Moments later, he handed over the first contact sheet. Photo 1. Mortimer Childs, captured in stark detail, hunched over Red's desk, his mouth eternally caught mid-sentence as though trapped in a moment of unspoken guilt. Photo 2. A shadowed figure, lurking behind him, pivoting just as the shutter clicked, an image that blurred in grainy resolution, yet screamed out its identity. Deputy Mayor Simon Greer. Lana leaned in, breath snapping as she recognized him instantly. "I know him," she spat, her voice charged with venom. "He slithered into one of my father's parties years ago, smiling like a venomous cobra." I stared at the photograph until a chill bloomed deep in my chest. "You wanted proof?" I growled. "Now we've got 2 scorching reasons for why the past was set ablaze." Chapter 9. A Game of Graves. Franklin Boyd's office spoke of past glories, a shrine to a man desperate to convince the world he was still at the top. A polished mahogany desk, a gleaming decanter of brandy, magazine covers frozen in an era gone by, all were relics meant to dazzle. Yet the peeling paint and the suffocating stench of stale cigars and bitter regrets betrayed the crumbling facade. He was there when I stormed in, lounging in his chair with his chin cradled by tangled fingers. His shirt sleeves were rolled up high. "You're brave," he drawled, "or stupid." "Sometimes they rhyme," I snapped back, flinging the photo onto his desk. He didn't rush to pick it up. Instead, his eyes locked on the searing, grainy black and white image. Mortimer Childs, caught mid-motion, and behind him, Deputy Mayor Simon Greer, his face a contorted mask of surprise, illuminated by the sly glint of Marty's Leica. Boyd's gaze never wavered, yet somewhere deep inside something clenched. "So," I said, voice brimming with barely contained fury. "Greer and Childs tore through a newspaper office last night, hunting for a forged page from a stolen ledger. I wouldn't know anything about that, he replied, his calm a disturbing counterpoint to the storm outside. I leaned in, voice low and dangerous. They ignited the fire at City Hall. They murdered Philip Drexler, and they broke into my apartment. You want to tell me what you know before I find out the hard way? At last his eyes flicked to the photo. They're scared, he murmured. You don't scorch the past unless you're terrified of what's still buried in its ashes. You were partners once, I pressed, the tension slicing through the stale air. He said nothing. I wanted the corridor, Boyd confessed, a bitter edge threading through his tone. I wanted it more than anything, but Philip wouldn't sell. Then one night at the bar, he shattered the illusion by saying, You think it's about the land? It's not. It never was. What did he mean? I demanded. Boyd's eyes met mine, the first time I'd ever seen him look human. I think it was about his daughter. Lana sat in the back seat of our battered Packard, her face ashen under the relentless glare of streetlights as we pulled up to the dilapidated State Union Trust building, a relic that shuttered its vaults long before its time. Yet Philip had stashed a safe deposit box here, its key hidden in an ornate music box Lana discovered wedged in the back of a dusty drawer after his funeral. We trampled through dust-choked corridors until we faced the vault. Her trembling fingers fumbled with the key before it clicked and turned the lock open. Inside lay a bundle of letters, ancient and meticulously folded, but concealed beneath was a legal envelope. Its paper redolent of ink, time, and raw power, a revised deed dated 2 years before the zoning deal, declaring Lana Drexler as co-owner of the Belmore property. He gave it to me? She whispered, barely daring to breathe. He guarded it, I said, my eyes coldly parsing every word. Had this surfaced sooner, you'd have had the power to block the corridor, to shatter the zoning claim entirely. That's why they had to wipe it clean. And that's why they murdered him. It was well past 10 when the phone rang. Lillian Drexler's house had been broken into and ransacked. We raced through the fog-drenched city, the darkness thick as liquid fear, until we reached her townhouse. I didn't slow as I burst through the door. Inside, Lillian stood amid the wreckage of her sitting room, shoulders squared defiantly, a revolver shaking ever so slightly in her grasp. They left the jewelry untouched, she said flatly, her tone steely. They didn't even crack the safe. Their eyes were locked on the desk. What was on it? I demanded. A backup page from the ledger. Lana's voice came out thin and haunted. Did they grab it? Lillian reached into her coat, pulling out the fragile page, still meticulously folded. No, I got it. My fingers curled around it as if it were a loaded weapon. They're escalating, I growled. They're scared, Lillian countered. Good, I snapped, turning to Lana with hardened determination. They want everything to end now. They want us to crumble, to burn everything and let it vanish. But now the truth is out. Greer, Childs, Boyd, turning a blind eye. The fire was merely the prelude. Lillian nodded slowly, like a warning bell tolling in the distance. So, what now? I moved purposefully to the shattered window and stared out into the city, where the fog spiraled like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Next, I declared, voice low and ferocious, we play a little game of our own. Chapter 10. The Devil in a Pinstripe Suit. The Dunsmore Yacht Club loomed at the river's edge like a dark shrine to vice, its golden windows searing against the void of night. Inside, the laughter twisted through the air like venomous smoke. Old money steeped in scandal collided with fresh corruption beneath a chandelier as monstrous as a Buick. I tugged at my tie, the fabric tightening like a noose, fighting back the urge to retch. Remind me while we're here, Lana whispered, her voice trembling with a dangerous edge as her borrowed dress shimmered under the harsh foyer lights. Because Deputy Mayor just can't stop parading his arrogance, I snarled. Tonight, he's trapped, every eye pinned on him, every shadow banished. Our tickets to the event came courtesy of Lillian Drexler, a woman who once danced with aging senators she'd outplayed and seduced when martinis cost a dime and a single glance could ruin a man. The gala pulsed with brittle, forced laughter and the desperate notes of underpaid musicians. Greer loomed in the center, clutching his drink like a trophy, encircled by sycophants swarming like flies around decay. His pinstripe suit was sharpened to lethal precision, and his smile was a cold snarl that never touched his eyes. "Wait here," I told Lana. "If it goes sideways, don't follow." She complied without protest, sharp, efficient. I wandered through the ballroom like a specter, threading between glittering pearls and poisonous politics. Greer spotted me immediately, a flicker of alarm crossing his features before they settled into icy arrogance. "Mr. Kaine," he drawled, voice slick and cold as oil. "I didn't expect to see you. I assumed this was a fundraiser for the respectable." "Then you're in the wrong ring," I retorted, sliding a damning photo from my coat pocket as if it were a loaded gun. I handed it to him like a love note soaked in threat. He snatched it up without a word, then his eyes fell to it. The moment crystallized. Click. His jaw clenched like iron, his hand knotted around the photo in a silent pledge of retribution. "I assume you've got a plan?" he hissed, voice low and deadly. "I assume you have a plan for explaining why you were trespassing at a newspaper office in the middle of the night." I shot back, eyes matching his stare evenly. He folded the photo neatly, tucking it away as if it were a secret weapon. "If you think this game ends with you clutching that picture," he growled, stepping closer, "you're out of your depth." "I'm not playing games," I spat, voice hard as shattered glass. "I'm here for the truth. About Philip Drexler. About the ledger. About why the zoning office went up in flames." He smiled, a cold, lethal twist of the lips that didn't promise reconciliation, only retribution. It wasn't a smile that said, "You're mistaken." It was a grim smile that declared you wouldn't live long enough to prove your righteousness. Then he turned away, swallowed by a roaring tide of forced applause as he rejoined the podium, launching into a toast about civic pride and empty prosperity. We didn't wait for the cake. Outside, the wind had morphed into a beast, and a razor-dry drizzle sliced the blacktop like a scalpel. "Did he bite the bait?" Lana asked as she slid into the car beside me. I ignited the engine with steady resolve. "He didn't just bite it. He swallowed it whole." We merged onto the rain-slick street, and within a block I caught a flash, the metallic glint in the ruined rooftop window of the old tailor shop across from the club. I didn't hesitate. I roared, "Down!" Glass exploded across the windshield. The car veered wildly. Lana screamed as chaos erupted. A second shot shattered the hood as I draped the wheel, flooring the accelerator down a shadowed alley. "Are you hit?" I barked, quickly checking her shoulders, her dress torn open, a red, angry scratch marring her skin, but not life-threatening. "I'm fine," she gasped, the noise of the world spiked with panic. "You?" "Not yet," I snarled, swerving hard as a third bullet clanged off the back bumper. We barreled down a narrow lane, clipping a trash bin and ricocheting past a forsaken church before ducking behind a shuttered butcher shop, plunging the vehicle into darkness. Silence fell, a shattered calm punctuated only by the relentless rain and our ragged breaths. Lana slumped back, her body trembling. "They weren't warning us anymore," she whispered, a note of despair threading her voice. "No," I said, eyes fixed on the gasping street. "They were aiming to finish us." Back in my ruined apartment, with nothing more than whiskey and torn gauze for relief, I stared at the creased, sweat-stained photo Greer had returned. They'd made their move. Next time, I'd make mine. And this time, I'd shoot first.